Hey guys, so the next step that we have to do with our cylinder is we are going to pretend that there is a light source that is shining down onto our cylinder right there. So I'm just going to pretend and draw that little imaginary light source. So when that light hits our cylinder, it's going to create a highlight on the left side of the cylinder and then a core shadow on the right. But it's also going to create this shadow that's going to stretch out from the cylinder to the right. So with our 2B pencil, so let's switch that to a 2B, we're going to very lightly draw a line that starts just a little bit further up from the bottom of our cylinder, so about right here. I'm just going to draw a nice straight line. It just goes out about that much. And then from the middle of my cylinder, about right there, I'm going to draw another line that stretches out to the edge of my paper that way. This is going to be our cast shadow. So now what we are going to do is we are going to take my 6B pencil and we are going to make this the darkest of darks. So we're going to darken this in. As we are closer to our cylinder right here, we can go ahead and apply a lot more pressure on our pencil. But as we get farther away from our cylinder, that's when I'm not going to press down as hard. I'm going to lighten up on the pressure. So right here, I'm pressing down a little bit more. But as I get closer to the edge on the right side, that's when I'm not going to press down as hard. So I'm going to do another layer of that. You always want to layer your graphite, just like what we did with the color pencils. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my blending stump and I'm going to smooth this over with my blending stump. And we're going to lighten that up a little bit. Now with my eraser, I'm just going to dab out some of that graphite, just a little bit. And then I'm going to smooth that over a little bit more. And there we go. That is the cast shadow. So our next step that we are going to do is we are going to do a core shadow. So our core shadow, here's the middle of our cylinder. We are just going to go a little bit past the middle, about that much. And we are going to stay where our smiley face is right here. We're going to draw with our 2B pencil a line that just goes down from the top of the cylinder right here to the bottom right there. And then what we are going to do is we are going to take our 2B and we are going to start with a light layer of gray. So we're going to fill that in nice and gray. Now that's the shape of our shadow, our core shadow here. Now we're just going to smudge that with our blending stump. You can turn your paper just a little bit if it helps. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually add just a little bit more of a darker core shadow. So I'm going back with my 2B pencil, and I'm just going to darken from here down to here, and from here I'm going to leave this little edge just a nice light gray. So let's darken this. From here to here, I'm going to extend that out just a tiny bit more. Just creating a darker shadow. I'm going to clean this up just a tiny bit right there. Here we go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start blending just a little bit in here. Still keeping this edge a lighter gray. Darkening this middle area. Let's clean that up just a tiny bit. There we go. So this right here is a hard edge, and that's when it's just a big dramatic change from light to dark and there's no gradient. So we want to turn this into a gradient that slowly goes from light to dark. So I'm going to take my blending stump, and I'm actually going to very lightly start blending from my dark, getting into a lighter gray, and then easing into my light highlight up here. I might have to go back and use my eraser as well to help blend this in. I'll smooth that over just a tiny bit more. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my eraser and just going to dab out a tiny bit of that. And then smooth it over again. Whoa, that was way too dark. When that happens and it's too dark, go ahead and either flip your paper over or get a clean sheet of paper and just take your blending stump and just wipe that clean from all that graphite. Graphite, so much graphite. All right, so now let's clean this up. I'm barely touching the paper right now with my blending stump. All right, now that's how to do the core shadow. So now what I'm going to do is, because this is a rounded shape, there is still going to be some darkness on the left edge, but just a little bit. So I'm just going to take my blending stump and I'm just going to take a little bit of that graphite and just add some of that graphite into the edge. Let's erase at the bottom right here. Now I'm going to add just a tiny bit to the top of my cylinder on the left side. It's going to curve around because this is a rounded edge. And we're going to keep this nice and light. We're not going to really mess with that as much. Now the last thing I need to do is I'm going to take my eraser and I'm going to very lightly dab out some of this graphite on the right side, because when light shines down on our cylinder, it's going to cast that shadow, but the light is also going to hit the table. It's going to bounce off the table and hit our object again. So we're going to have this reflected light. So I'm just going to dab out a tiny sliver of graphite on the right edge of my cylinder. And I'm also going to make sure that I curve that light at the very bottom of my cylinder because this is a curved edge. It's not a rectangle, it is a cylinder. And I'm just going to take my blending stump and I'm just going to smooth that over a little bit more. All right, and that is how to make a cylinder look 3D. Thanks, guys.